All right, everybody, welcome back for another deep dive.
Yeah, great to be here.
You know, we always like to get into some really meaty stuff, and today we are going deep.
Yeah, we're going way more.
Over 2,000 years back with Plato's Republic.
Yeah, this is a classic.
Absolutely a classic. And, it's one of those books I feel like everybody's heard of,
Oh, yeah,
but maybe not everybody's read.
for sure.
And maybe for good reason, it's a bit of a challenge.
It can be a little dense.
Yeah. So we are going to be tackling some excerpts from the Republic.
Mm-hmm.
And specifically, we're going to be looking at justice,
Yes.
Plato's idea of the ideal state,
Mm-hmm.
and, of course, the Allegory of the Cave.
The Allegory of the Cave, one of the all-time greats.
Yeah, super famous and really thought-provoking. So I'm excited to get into this.
Yeah, and what's so fascinating about the Republic is just how relevant it still is today.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, we're talking about ideas that are over 2,000 years old,
Yeah.
but they still resonate with us today. You know, justice,
Mm-hmm.
the ideal society,
Yeah.
what is truth.
These are things that we're still grappling with.
All right, so let's start with justice,
Okay.
because that is one of the core topics that Plato is addressing in the Republic. And
Yeah.
right out of the gate,
Yeah.
we were met with this character, Thrasymachus.
Oh, yeah, he's a firecracker.
He's got kind of a spicy take on justice.
A little bit.
And he says, justice is basically just the advantage of the stronger.
Just simple as that.
Which, yeah, pretty cynical.
It is cynical, but I think it's a view that a lot of people hold. You know,
Oh, sure.
maybe they wouldn't articulate it quite that way, but this idea that might makes, right?
Right.
That whoever has the power gets to decide what's just.
Right. It's kind of a realist perspective.
Yeah. Yeah.
But of course, our main man, Socrates, is not having it.
No, he's got to push back on that.
He offers this counter argument.
Yeah.
And he really pushes back against this idea that it's just about power. He believes that true justice
Right.
is actually about this balance between
The individual and the society.
benefiting both.
Right. It's about finding what is good for both.
Yeah, and this idea is still debated today.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, like, is it more important to focus on individual rights?
Right.
Or is it more important to focus on the good of the collective?
Right, the common good.
Yeah, so these are really fundamental questions.
Yeah, okay, so we've got this idea of justice that is supposed to benefit both the individual and society.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we achieve this? How do we live this out?
Well, that's where Plato brings in this idea of the tripartite soul,
Okay.
which is just a fancy way of saying that our soul has three parts.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Lay it on me.
All right, so we've got reason,
Okay.
we've got spirit,
Okay.
and we've got desire.
Okay, so reason, spirit, and desire.
Yes,
Yeah.
and you can think of it kind of like a chariot,
Okay.
where reason is the charioteer trying to control these two horses
Okay.
of spirit and desire. Now,
Yeah.
desire is kind of like that wild horse that just wants to run free.
Okay.
You know, it wants instant gratification.
I think we all know that horse pretty well.
Oh, yeah, we've all been there.
For sure.
And then spirit is more like that noble steed,
Okay.
you know, that wants to do what's right,
Mm.
that wants to be courageous and honorable.
Right, so spirit's got that kind of moral compass.
Exactly. And then reason is trying to keep them both in check.
All right, so reason's like the mediator,
Yes.
trying to get those two horses to work together.
Right, because if either one of those horses takes over,
Uh-oh.
it's going to be a bumpy ride.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You know, if desire takes over, you're just going to be chasing after pleasure all the time.
Right, just chasing those carrots.
Yeah, exactly. And if spirit takes over, you might become reckless or overly aggressive.
Right, so it's all about finding that balance.
Exactly. So when reason is in control
Mm-hmm.
and it's able to guide both spirit and desire,
Yeah,
then we achieve this inner harmony.
okay.
And that's what Plato sees as essential for individual justice.
So we've got justice on an individual level,
Mm-hmm.
but how does this translate to a whole society?
Well, that's where Plato's idea of the ideal state comes in.
Okay, let's hear it.
So he envisions this society that's structured in three classes.
Okay, what are the classes?
So we've got the rulers,
Okay.
the auxiliaries,
Mhm.
and the producers.
Okay, so rulers, auxiliaries, and producers.
Yes. And each class has a specific function based on those parts of the soul that we were just talking about.
Okay, this is starting to come together.
Yeah, so the rulers, these are like the philosopher-kings.
Okay.
These are the wisest, the most just individuals.
Like the reason.
Exactly. They're guided by reason, and their job is to lead the state.
Okay.
Then we've got the auxiliaries.
Mm-hmm.
These are like the warriors,
Okay.
the guardians of the state.
So they're like the spirit.
Exactly. They're guided by spirit, and their job is to protect the state.
Right.
And then we've got the producers. And these are the people who provide for the basic needs of society.
So they're the desire.
Well, sort of their desires are channeled into providing food, shelter,
Oh,
all the necessities of life.
Right. So each class plays its part.
Yeah.
And together they create this harmonious society.
Exactly. And for Plato, this is how you achieve justice on a societal level.
Okay. But I gotta say, this sounds a little idealistic.
Yeah.
I mean, can we really expect people to just neatly fit into these categories?
Right. And that's one of the big criticisms of Plato's ideal state.
Yeah.
You know, is it realistic?
Right.
Is it even desirable?
Yeah. I mean, what about individual freedom?
Yeah, exactly. What if someone who's supposed to be a producer actually has the soul of a ruler?
Right.
Should they be denied that opportunity?
Yeah. And who gets to decide who goes where?
Yeah. Who decides who's a philosopher-king?
Right. I feel like there could be some problems there.
Yeah, there's definitely some potential for abuse, so it's not a perfect system.
But it's definitely interesting to think about.
Oh, absolutely. It makes us question, you know, what is the best way to structure society?
Yeah.
How do we balance individual needs with the needs of the collective?
Right. It's giving us a framework to start those conversations.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about justice. We've talked about the ideal state.
Yes.
Now let's get to the allegory of the cave.
All right, let's do it.
So this is one of those really vivid metaphors.
Oh, yeah, it's so powerful.
That I think really sticks with people.
Definitely.
So just to refresh everyone's memory,
Yeah.
paint us a picture of what's happening in this allegory.
All right, so imagine a group of prisoners.
Okay.
They're chained up in a cave,
Mm-hmm.
and they've been there their entire lives.
Okay.
They can't move their heads. They can only look straight ahead.
Okay.
And behind them, there's a fire.
Mm-hmm.
And between the fire and the prisoners,
Yeah.
there are these puppeteers who are walking back and forth, carrying these objects.
Right.
And the fire is casting shadows of these objects onto the wall of the cave.
Okay.
So the prisoners are seeing these shadows, and they think that these shadows are reality.
Wow.
That's all they've ever known.
It's all they've ever known.
Yeah, it's their entire world.
So the shadows represent illusion.
Exactly.
Right.
They represent this limited perspective that we have when we're trapped in ignorance.
All right, we're only seeing this kind of like surface level appearance.
Exactly.
Not the true form.
And then one of the prisoners escapes.
Okay.
And he makes this journey out of the cave. And it's a difficult journey.
Right.
It's painful.
Right.
He's blinded by the sunlight at first.
Yeah, it's like adjusting to a whole new reality.
Exactly. But eventually he adjusts.
Okay.
And he sees the world as it truly is.
Wow.
He sees the sun. He sees the real objects that were casting those shadows.
So he's seeing the truth.
Yes. And the sun represents that ultimate source of truth and enlightenment.
Okay, so we've got the shadows, which are the illusion.
Yeah.
We've got the real world outside the cave, which is the truth. And we've got the sun, which is like the source of all truth.
Exactly.
Okay, now here's where I think things get really interesting.
Yeah.
What are the caves in our own lives?
Ooh, that's a great question.
Right. What are the shadows that we might be mistaking for reality?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of potential caves in the modern world.
Oh, for sure.
You know, we've got our own kind of echo chambers where we're only exposed to information that confirms our existing beliefs.
Right. So it's like we're choosing to stay in the cave.
Yeah, we're comfortable there.
Right.
We don't want to challenge our assumptions.
Yeah, and I think also, you know, we are bombarded with so much information
Oh, yeah.
these days that it's hard to know what's true.
It's hard to filter.
Right.
What's
Yeah.
real, what's not.
Yeah. So it's like we're surrounded by shadows.
And we have to be really careful about what we choose to believe.
Right. And I think the allegory of the cave is really this call to action.
Yeah.
It's saying, you know, don't just accept things at face value.
Right.
Question your assumptions.
Seek out different perspectives.
Yeah. Break free from the cave.
Exactly. And it's not easy.
No.
You know, it's a difficult journey.
Right.
But it's worth it.
Okay, so we've got justice, we've got the ideal state, we've got the allegory of the cave, and then Plato throws us one more curveball
Oh.
with his critique of democracy.
He was not a fan.
Not a fan.
Not a fan of democracy.
And this might be a little bit surprising to some people.
Yeah, especially for us, you know, living in a democratic society.
Right.
We tend to think of democracy as a good thing.
Right.
But Plato had some serious concerns.
Oh, what were those concerns?
So his main concern was that in a democracy, the people making the decisions aren't necessarily the most qualified.
Okay.
You know, he was worried about mob rule,
Uh,
where people are making decisions based on emotion
Right.
rather than reason.
So he wasn't a fan of populism.
No, he thought that could lead to bad leadership
Right.
and ultimately an unjust society.
Okay, so he's saying if you leave it up to the mob,
Mm-hmm.
who are just driven by their desires,
Yeah.
and not by reason.
Then you're going to end up with chaos.
Potentially, yeah.
And injustice.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's a pretty scathing critique of democracy.
It is.
But I think it's a critique that we should still consider today.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a reminder that democracy is fragile.
Mm-hmm.
It requires informed and engaged citizens.
Right. People who are willing to think critically
Yeah.
and not just follow the crowd.
Exactly.
So it's a challenge to all of us
It is.
to be those informed and engaged citizens and to really think about, you know, what is justice?
Yeah.
What is the best way to govern ourselves?
What is the truth?
Yeah, these are big questions.
Big questions.
But the Republic gives us the tools to start exploring them.
Absolutely. So, listeners, if you haven't already, I highly recommend checking out the Republic.
Or even just start with the Allegory of the Cave.
Yeah, that's a good starting point.
It's a really powerful metaphor that will stay with you. And it might just make you question your own reality.
Yeah, who knows? You might even find yourself escaping from a cave or two.
That's what it's all about.
All right, well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the Republic.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you next time
See ya.
for another deep dive.
Bye.
Bye!